Greetings and welcome to Lesson 5 of INTL 644, where we will deal with the phase of the intelligence cycle called dissemination. As I mentioned earlier, this is a two-pronged course. We look at cyber targets in the intelligence cycle, but we also look at cyber tools and how they can help the intelligence cycle execute the mission. Some of you may find it ironic that I quote the New York Times in a session on cyber dissemination, but the gray lady, as the New York Times is called, has also aggressively moved into the cyber world with not only their online product, but their distribution of free cardboard virtual reality viewers to their print subscribers. In this lesson, we will continue to differentiate the cyber domain from traditional space, air, land, and sea. We will again look at the challenges. We will emphasize a little bit more on how the commercialization of technology is going, the consumerization is what I meant to say, the consumerization of technology in the business world is affecting how information is disseminated there. And we'll look at additional technology challenges. In the olden days, the intelligence community had a monopoly on information. The jargon of the day was everything is behind the green door being the locked and secured entrance to the intelligence facility. Today, the world is different. There is no longer a monopoly on information within the intelligence community. 7x24 connectivity to the internet and to each other is considered the norm. The personal devices, in particular the smartphone, has given the individual access to more information more quickly than could have been conceived. From a sociological standpoint, there is now a compressed time pressure, particularly for industries where there are demands on personnel 7x24, international companies. I worked for a very large software company, international software company, and we had not only scheduled team meetings in various times and days because of our global marketing team, but unscheduled events in one part of the world can mean market opportunities in another. The last thing on this slide is the pervasive computer network exploitation by our adversaries, and we'll talk quite a bit about that next week in Counter Cyber Intelligence. There are two instances in our history that stand out, partially because of the dissemination problem. The inability to get the right intelligence to the right consumer at the right time. In both instances, the intelligence community had the intelligence it needed that indicated enemy activity. The intelligence operation at Pearl Harbor did indeed have intercepts that indicated a mass attack was being planned by the Japanese. And various and sundry intelligence agencies in 2011 had information about Al-Qaeda. If you want to see how this was brought to the public's attention, you can look at the 9/11 Commission report or you can Google Richard Clarke and look for his apology to the American public because the intelligence community, in his words, let them down. The issues were not that they did not have the intelligence, that the intelligence was not shared properly. In the case of Pearl Harbor, there was an indication of a lack of cooperation between services, whereas in 9/11, there was a lack of intelligence sharing across the community, and of course, the Department of Defense puts a big wall between itself and the rest of the world, the community, intelligence community. And fair to say that at the time, the FBI and the State Department also had walls that prohibited the information getting to where it needed to be in order to have an impact on the operation at hand. We'll turn our attention for the next few minutes to looking at changes in the commercial sector and the IT, information technology industry in particular, and how that affects the military, in particular, dissemination. All of us at AMU are customers of web-based services. Office 365 is the standard software used by the university. Office 365 gives the authorized users access to not only the Word and Excel and PowerPoint and Outlook that we rely on every day, but also access to more advanced software such as OneNote, which is a collaboration platform, as well as, if you will, an individual planner and a group planner. Web-based services are growing at an incredibly fast rate. The Forbes magazine article shows 69% growth for Amazon Web Services, and Amazon Web Services is clearly the big dog in the web services world. It's important to point out that while the web services will bring the application to the user on a monthly basis, it is still the responsibility of the user to secure their environment. Amazon goes to great lengths to make this clear to their web services customers and provides very clear guidance on what responsibilities are the customers and what responsibilities are Amazon's. An astute attacker will also read the Amazon Web Services materials and will determine where a user could fall down by not having taken the precautions or the steps that Amazon has required. So, while web-based services are a new market model, they don't replace the vulnerabilities they create. A second critical trend is mobile devices. The IC will sooner or later have to follow the pattern of consumerization experienced by business. In July of 2016, for example, the Army replaced its Android phones with iPhones. As you see in the second bullet, employee personal devices, those owned by the employees, are being used in what's called Bring Your Own Device, BYOD, at many organizations. And it is now the responsibility of that organization to implement the security precautions needed to safeguard the organization's sensitive information. Organizations can do that by providing secure tunnels, if you will, into the application at the home office so that the accessor never gets the data on their device. The organization can provide encryption to the employee. And there are some other things that the organization can do. However, there is still the preference for many people to use their own devices, even though they're not standard within the company. This is another vulnerability that technology has created, but on the other hand, these devices also provide a ready channel of information that can be used to disseminate information if appropriate, which brings us to the notion of social media. We talk about dissemination. In the world of disasters, natural disasters, analysts have found that by analyzing the volume of tweets surrounding a particular disaster, they can understand the level of concern and anxiety of the public, and that the tweet traffic follows a pretty much normal curve, so that as the disaster winds down, it's possible to see that the interest and concern is winding down with it. When we talk about social media, we talk about LinkedIn, we talk about Pinterest, and we talk about everybody's favorite, Facebook. Facebook is just everywhere. I was on a trip to Italy, and I don't care if you were the garbage man, you were checking your phone and your Facebook. It was incredible. Most people under the age of 60-ish, I guess, are on it, and many, if not most people over the age of 60. It's just an incredible phenomenon. Millennials and those younger than millennials are not only familiar and comfortable, but I think fair to say addicted to social media. And even the most intelligent of the Generation X, Generation Y, and millennials are obsessed with putting their life's experiences on Facebook, whether it's I'm having Chinese food or isn't this a great looking mojito? So I'll talk about the OPSEC concerns in a minute. There is also a trend, initial trend, whereby businesses are starting to adopt private social networks. And if we look at private social networks for intelligence purposes, particularly dissemination, social media can provide the kind and depth of feedback on the intelligence work product that has never been possible before. Furthermore, the nature of social media being interactive and two-way also facilitates the quality of the work product. For example, the traffic reports on the app Waze, W-A-Z-E, are generated by individuals who are going down the particular road. That information can be more accurate and more timely than the generic information that's beamed over the GPS in your car. So as social media networks and private social media networks mature, I think we can expect to see more of this adapted within the intelligence community. maybe not so much for tactical intelligence, but certainly for the kind of work product we look for in on a strategic level or in a steady state. Let's turn our attention here now to the OPSEC issues. Cyber dissemination presents a variety of OPSEC issues, not the least of which is the blurring of the personal and work environment. Not everybody is in a SCIF 7x24. SCIF, acronym for Secure Compartmented Intelligence Facility. Not everyone is in the SCIF, and everybody has to go home sooner or later. They take their device with them. The use of the device itself and where the device is used can present an OPSEC challenge. For example, if you're at Starbucks having your morning non-fat latte and you're on the Starbucks network, that presents one level of challenge. And even if you're not on the Starbucks network, there's the ever-present somebody right next to you or the next table over. And there are other means to connect to the phone, the Bluetooth in addition to the Wi-Fi. And so there are some security issues related to the personal devices. It is likely that the future intelligence worker, and by future I'm talking 20 years, will have a portable, secure environment that will be kind of their own little cone of silence or bubble where they can do their work, but not everywhere, of course. Turning our attention to technical OPSEC of the cyber domain, common things that are employed by organizations, military and commercial, are data loss or data leak protection, whereby you would tell the system what you want to protect against, like the emailing of a PowerPoint file, and the system will not allow these kinds of files to go out absent an override. Multi-factor authentication, particularly where you have something you know and something you have, using your personal phone where you log in with a password, and your personal phone that gets a code 6 to 8 digits that you have to plug in so that you can be granted access. That is multi-factor authentication. After the Snowden and Bradley incidents, the U.S. government implemented a lockout of any device that can be plugged onto a laptop or government laptop or PC with a USB stick that would be able to store a lot of information. There's also a web filtering and black and white lists where certain websites are not accessible from certain systems. Organizations, however, are sometimes inconsistent on their own facility. For example, at the CDC in the early 2000s, 2008 timeframe, you could not access AOL from your workstation inside the facility, but you could access AOL from the library. Last but not least, we're seeing a greater use of technical surveillance countermeasures, commonly called bug sweeping, in commercial situations. That is becoming a concern for many organizations. So in this lesson, we learned about the democratization of knowledge and how the intelligence community no longer has a monopoly on knowledge. We've gained an appreciation for how technical developments, particularly smartphones, are impacting cyber dissemination. We've talked a bit about the OPSEC concerns. We've gazed into the future a little bit and determined that the intelligence worker in the future will need to have a much more portable, secure environment. And we've talked about how the insider threat is sometimes countered with technology such as the lockout of USBs. Our two forum questions this week, I think, address two things that we've covered in detail. One is the lack of a monopoly on knowledge. That's the first question. And the second question discusses the challenge of sharing information. Next week, we switch gears and go from offense and the offensive and enumerated phases of the intelligence cycle to defense, where we take a look at counter cyber intelligence, a field that is growing and is becoming a great challenge. And as we go through next week, I'd encourage you in particular to think about the week ahead, week 7, the week after next week, because we will go into our practical exercise. The purpose of the practical exercise and the goal of the practical exercise is allow you to take advantage of what you learn and excuse me, apply the intelligence cycle against the cyber target, and use whatever cyber tools you have at your disposal. I encourage you to think out of the box, use research, and don't limit yourself to the classroom materials. Thanks for your attention.